Imagine a country where everything seems perfect. Immaculate streets, a cuisine that conquers the world, a place that sets trends in makeup and fashion, inspires styles, and brings stories like When Life Gives You Mandarins to Life. And now, it's also dominating the anime market with Solo Leveling. But what if I told you that this is just the facade? Behind the shine, thousands live in damp, cramped basements in Seoul, never seeing the sunlight. While idols smile on stage, many young people struggle with depression, loneliness, and the suffocating pressure to be perfect. Pseudo-religious sects take advantage of these weaknesses to manipulate and control. This is the Korea no one shows you, the Korea that stories prefer to hide. Today's South Korea was born from a very different past than the glamorous image it presents now. Just a few decades ago, the country was steeped in misery, marked by ruins, hunger, and a population struggling to rise after years of invasions and conflicts. In the early 1960s, the average income of a South Korean was comparable to some of the poorest nations on Earth. Subsistence farming supported much of the population, and cities lacked sanitation, reliable transportation, and even consistent electricity. But then came a drastic turn. Under authoritarian regimes that enforced strict discipline, and with strong strategic and financial backing from foreign allies, the country began to shape a plan for rapid growth. Heavy investments were made in infrastructure, manufacturing, and education. Small family-owned factories transformed into conglomerates capable of competing in the global market. Names like Daewoo, Hanwha, POSCO, and Kia emerged or expanded, helping to elevate Korea from a rural, backward landscape into an industrial powerhouse. In just a few decades, skyscrapers replaced villages, highways spanned the country from end to end, and internet connection became one of the fastest in the world. What was once a forgotten country began to export knowledge, culture, and technology. However, this lightning transformation didn't come without a cost. Entire generations lived under grueling work hours. Young people were educated under almost unbearable pressure. Women's participation was often invisible, and families sacrificed their time together in the name of uninterrupted progress. In the numbers, Korea won. It grew its GDP, climbed competitiveness rankings, and became a modern icon. But in the streets and within homes, scars remained. Marks of a growth that was too fast, which shaped today's society and still exacts its toll. Korean development is real, but it cost far more than money. It cost mental health, freedom, youth, and often even lives. Now that the country has reached the top, a question starts to emerge. Was it really worth it? The numbers don't lie. South Korea is among the countries with the highest suicide rates in the developed world, with the most affected being teenagers and young adults. In 2022, more than half of all deaths among people in their 20s were due to suicide. Among those aged 10 to 39, suicide remains the leading cause of death. The pandemic only worsened the situation. In 2021, the suicide rate among those under 17 rose from 2.5 to 2.7 per 100,000 inhabitants. The most alarming statistic came from the 12 to 14 age group, where the rate nearly doubled, reaching 5 per 100,000, a troubling jump for such a young age. So why is this happening? Social isolation in South Korea had been growing for years, but it intensified during the pandemic. Social distancing measures and the closure of schools and public spaces cut off a significant portion of social interaction, leaving young people even more isolated. Many grow up in silent apartments, spending hours alone while their parents work long hours. Most interactions happen through screens, which keeps in touch but can't replace physical presence or the emotional support that comes from real relationships. This digital dependence is further fueled by social media, where everything is compared and judged: grades, appearance, lifestyle. Constant exposure to the critical gaze of others amplifies anxiety and the feeling of never being enough. Over time, this becomes a cycle of loneliness and depression that's hard to break. The cult of image is one of the most visible marks of social pressure in South Korea. Rigid beauty standards, like flawless fair skin, perfectly symmetrical faces, and slim bodies, are not just ideals, but silent demands that shape the lives of millions. From adolescence, many feel they must fit these molds to be accepted. In practice, appearance functions as social capital. Having the right face or the right body can influence everything from how someone is treated in everyday life to their job opportunities. In many job interviews, for example, visual assessment is part of the process, reinforcing the idea that being outside the standard is like starting the race several steps behind. This pursuit of perfection fuels a massive aesthetic industry. Studies show that nearly a third of women under 30 have undergone some form of plastic surgery, and the numbers are rising among men as well. For those who don't measure up to these standards, the result is often social exclusion, low self-esteem, and, in many cases, isolation. This generation grew up hearing that there was a clear path to success: study hard, get into a good university, land a stable job, and then build a family. For decades, this script worked for many Koreans. Parents believed that individual effort alone was enough to guarantee stability, and this view was passed down to children as the rule. However, the current reality is very different. Even with perfect resumes, fluent English, and multiple certifications, thousands of young people face a saturated job market. The most coveted positions are concentrated in a few giant companies, where competition is almost impossible. Outside of this select group, what's left are temporary contracts, low wages, and unstable work hours. This contrast has created an evident generational inequality. While the previous generation built wealth, bought homes, and benefited from the country's rapid growth, younger people are dealing with high rents, student debts, and few prospects for advancement. For many, even dreaming of marriage or having children has become unattainable. South Korea reached modernity, prestige, and global influence, but something was lost in the process. The so-called economic miracle brought wealth, but also left deep scars, an invisible cost weighing on a society that's increasingly pressured, divided, and exhausted. That's the side almost no one sees. When you walk the well-lit streets of Seoul, admire the modern architecture of the buildings, and see people impeccably dressed on the subway, it's easy to believe you're in one of the richest and most advanced countries on the planet. And in a way you are, but just beneath that shine lies an invisible Korea, hidden from the spotlight. One example of this is the neighborhood of Sangmundong, which gained worldwide attention after some scenes from Squid Game were filmed there. Suddenly, influencers began visiting its narrow, modest streets, recording videos for social media. But behind that sudden fame lies a harsh reality. It's one of the areas where some of the city's poorest and most indebted residents live. This hidden poverty is also reflected in the Banjiha, basements converted into living spaces that became internationally known after the success of the film Parasite. They are cramped spaces with tiny windows that open to walls or sidewalks. When it rains, they flood. When the heat rises, they turn into unbearable ovens. Few live there by choice. Most do so because they have nowhere else to go. It's not just the young. Many elderly people also survive in these extreme conditions. They spend their days collecting cardboard, selling recyclables, or wandering the streets in search of a few coins. Pensions are minimal, and many have no family nearby. Some work until their last day. Meanwhile, Korea, which built one of the fastest internet systems in the world, still fails at the basics, ensuring dignity for those who need it most. What's most striking is that, while all of this is happening, the rich continue to get richer. Social inequality in Korea is among the highest in the developed world. A few families control much of the national wealth, passing down positions and power to their children, while the rest of the population chases a train that will never stop for them. It's not just a matter of merit or effort. For many, the opportunity simply doesn't exist. This is the cruel face of modernization. Poverty didn't disappear. It was pushed into places no one wants to look. No drama, K-pop music video, or tourism campaign shows this silent Korea. South Korea is known for its discipline and ability to produce at an accelerated pace. But that machinery comes at a high cost, and not always does the one paying feel the price in the moment. Overworking is not the exception, it's almost an obligation. In many companies, especially in large corporations, working 70 or more hours a week is seen as normal. And it's not just about physical exhaustion. It's the mental, emotional, and psychological weight that comes with every extra hour. There's even a very common concept there, presenteeism, which means staying in the office even when there's nothing left to do, just to show you're committed. Leaving on time, taking vacations, or simply saying no to a task can provoke uncomfortable looks and even damage your reputation. This logic was born during the so-called economic miracle, when the older generation sacrificed everything to rebuild the country. Today, the younger generation has inherited that same model, but in a world that's faster, more competitive, and unforgiving. It's not uncommon to see people sleeping in chairs at 24-hour cafes, nodding off on the subway, or even locking themselves in public restrooms to catch a few minutes of sleep between shifts. Many hold 2 or 3 jobs. Others study late at night after long work hours. believing it will open doors for them. The result is a vicious cycle. Wake up, produce, pretend everything is fine, and start again the next day. In a country where productivity is treated as synonymous with human worth, taking time to care for oneself is seen as laziness. The problem is that thousands have already reached their limit and don't know where to turn for help. This extreme effort doesn't create winners. It creates exhausted people with vacant stares, counting down the hours until the weekend like waiting for a rare chance to breathe. The economic miracle pushed Korea forward, but now it's collecting its price, and it's being paid with anxiety, exhaustion, and silent collapses. In this scenario, where so many people feel lost and exhausted, dangerous gaps begin to emerge. Among them is the rise of pseudo-religious groups that present themselves as spiritual support but are actually networks of manipulation. South Korea is one of the countries with the highest number of these organizations, many disguised as Christian groups, but distorting teachings to serve the interests of leaders who position themselves as almost divine figures. Millions have already encountered one of these sects, and experts claim that there are dozens, perhaps even hundreds, scattered across the country. These groups offer comfort and purpose to emotionally fragile young people, worn out by the system and searching for meaning. In practice, they control every aspect of their followers' lives, exploiting them emotionally, financially, and even politically. There are reports of infiltration in universities, social movements, and even election campaigns, shaping decisions and interests behind the scenes. Behind South Korea's modern and technological image, there's an influential network that echoes medieval methods, using faith as a tool of control, keeping thousands trapped in a cycle of obedience and dependence. South Korea dazzles at first sight. In photos, it shines with its illuminated streets. In the numbers, it impresses with its economy. And in culture, it captivates the world with K-pop, series, and trends that spread fast. But what doesn't show up in the dramas is a country where loneliness is silent, and where, behind the skyscrapers, there are damp, narrow basements housing those left behind. While the world vibrates with the aesthetic, many young people live like the protagonist of Zom 100, dragging themselves through the routine like zombies, without blood or fear, but with the same emptiness in their gaze. This isn't fiction. It's working until you can't feel your body anymore, studying until you lose sleep, smiling in public to hide the fact that you're on the brink of collapse. In this society, showing weakness can almost be seen as a moral failure. Behind the shine at exports, there are abandoned elderly people, families drowning in debt, and lives that don't fit into the perfect feed. South Korea isn't a fairy tale. It's a real country, with stories that don't always have a happy ending. And that's what few remember. Every meteoric advance comes with a price. In any nation that grows too quickly, there are always those who get left behind, hidden from the world, but carrying the weight of progress on their shoulders.